This is the story of Alexander Pike Bell. Tom Burness, an antique gun collector, shares some interesting facts about Pike.
Gun that he obviously did have. The gun that he obviously did have was probably the Spencer carbine right here, which is a Civil War, the gun that Lincoln shot on the White House lawn and then armed the Union troops with because it was such a popular gun. It was a repeater. It was quite durable. It shot 7 shots. It was a 52 caliber gun using a number 56 Spencer case, which this is the bullet, the cartridge right here. This is a loaded cartridge. Was a it carried approximately a 450 grain bullet, and it shot approximately 40 grains or 35 grains of black powder. Without looking it up, I don't exactly know what it was it used. It loaded through the rear right here through this tubular magazine. These would slip down in this tube like there, fit down in there. It held 7 rounds, and you put this back in here, up like that. Put this away because we're not loading it. And then as the gun was levered, a round would come up out of the magazine, up into the, this would push it back into the chamber. You would cock the weapon back and fire it. And you would expel the old round. It would bring in a new round at the same time, close it, cock it back, and fire it again. And this went through 7 rounds. And it would hold 7 cartridges. So it was very popular during the Civil War when most of the weapons at that time were muzzle loaders. Very few of them carried actual cartridges. Most of them were cap and ball. And this is the cartridge that was found in Pike Bell's outhouse. In the diggings down in the outhouses, there was a casing, an empty shell casing, which probably these were not reloadable cases, so they were worthless after they were fired. So you just throw away the empty cases, which is probably what he did in his outhouse. Miners favored these type of weapons quite a bit too. Where's the other one here? These are commonly called muff pistols or boot pistols. This is a large version of it. This is the small version of it. And what miners would do is when they were down panning gold, they always wore large boots, and they would be down on their haunches panning, and they would stick these in their boot. And then if they were attacked or they were by highwaymen or somebody that was trying to jump their claim, they could easily retrieve this from their boot in the sitting position, which they couldn't if they had a gun in a holster. They could retrieve this out of their boot and spin around and pop somebody with it because it's a cap and ball also. And even though it only held 1 round, it was a large caliber. It was 45 caliber. And it would do a serious bit of harm. Most likely, if Pike Bell had a Spencer carbine, which was a fairly new gun at that time, it was probably the main possession he had. It was probably his best possession. It was the most valuable item he probably had in his whole itinerary of items.
What would they cost?
Well, they didn't cost, of course, relative to now, they were about a $20, $25 gun. Of course, that's when people were working for $5 and $10 a month. So we were looking at a 3 or 4 used gun. It probably was at least 2/3 of that value.
I discovered an L-shaped floor plan of Pike Bell's house showing a wraparound porch and a geological map of the area. Looking west on Bell Road across Highway 49, one can see how steep Ball Hill becomes as you go up to the Bell homestead. After you pass Miyagi's gym, you can begin to see the field on the left that contains ruins of the Bell homestead. The NID water ditch played an important part in the water rights that were included in the legal documents of the Bell family. The viewpoint from the intersection of Deseret Road and Bell Road begins to show the distant hills and the Sierra Mountains. Doris Vieira, an active historian and booster of local restoration projects, graciously visited the Bell homestead site to discuss a possible historical marker.
To see what Auburn was like in the area. I think it's just wonderful. We'll try and work out something. My committee is very anxious to do this and see sites like this and have people come and know what it was about. Pike Bell was quite an interesting character. he made a name for himself, that was for sure.
Little did I know I was beginning a 14-year journey through one mystery after another. After many inquiries, I heard that the road was named after a gold miner named Pike Bell, and he had lived on Bald Hill. There were a lot of bald hills in the area. I found interesting details of the family at the county library, how the family had endured disease, death of some of their children, injuries, land, gold mines, fortune, success, failure, and notoriety through the crimes of their daughter Alma. That Pike had a gold watch chain and some guns. I spoke with gold miner and museum docent Don Albrecht.
At the DeWitt Center, if you go to the end and back of where they gas up the police cars and all the county vehicles, there's a swimming pool back there. Just near that swimming pool, underground, there's several underground tunnels. They had a cave-in a couple of years ago, and they wanted me to go in there and do some prospecting, but I just didn't have the time, and so they finally filled it in. But that used to be a mine called the Black Lead, and that mine was adjacent to Bell's property. Now, how far it went north by northwest toward Bell's property, I don't know. So yeah, half of DeWitt Center might have been taken up by his ranch. I do know that his ranch ran in what is now Auburn Faith Hospital and ran down where the Auburn Greens apartments are, all the way down to the creek where the park is. That used to be his ranch, because the old fence used to be there, and I used to roam in that country. And at one time, about 3 years ago, they took a backhoe and pushed it in. But Pike sunk a shaft about 18 feet deep. In later years, people came in on lease or else after Bell was out of there and dug a tunnel in from the top off of the hill right up and punched in right at the base of his shaft, so that you could go in the tunnel and go up and stand like in a well and look up at the base of his shaft. And the shaft was about that big in diameter. And I went in there with a metal detector and walked right straight in, and I detected. Of course, back then the detectors weren't that good, but I got a little beep, and I got a little arrowhead piece of gold, looked like a little arrowhead, stuck in the rock, still there. It's little thin quartz seams in there, and the gold was in the seam on contact with the red material.
Which mine was this now?
The Green Immigrant. That pocket where he took $167,000 at $20 an ounce.
And where's the location of that exactly?
It's right, if you go into Auburn Faith Hospital and go in a parking lot in back where the employees park, there's a fence. Well, if you look across the blank field, there's another fence with a big white quartz boulder laying there. The mine was just downhill from that quartz boulder and about 30 feet from the fence. I don't know how many acres, 10, 12, 15, something like that. Anyway, Pike Bell and Crutcher got together and made a deal where Pike would go and prospect and look for a pocket that Pike thought was on Crutcher's property. And this is what Harry told me. And so it was okay at first, but then Pike started prospecting and coming up with a little bit. Then evidently Crutcher got kind of second thoughts about the deal, and no, I don't want to mine it. So Pike says, okay, well, I'm not going to tell you where the pocket is then. And that was the end of it. And I don't think, as far as Harry told me, Pike and Crutcher never talked to each other after that. So I don't know what the deal was there, whether Crutcher had second thoughts by greed or whether he had second thoughts. One of the things said was, well, I don't want you to undermine my house, but the location of the thing was way far from Crutcher's house, I believe.
You mentioned it was on something about a swimming pool.
Yeah, up on top of the hill is the big house. Now, if that's Crutcher's house, then if that was Crutcher's house, well then, yeah, that was, because just in back of the house is a swimming pool. And when I was delivering mail up there, back in the 80s, a guy was remodeling the swimming pool, and they dug in and expanded it a little bit. It was just pretty much a V-shaped pool, and they wanted to elongate it. And when they dug the old pool out and they started breaking into the bedrock, they started coming across gold-bearing quartz. And that was where Pike had the idea that the seam was. And so the guy that owned the property just had him cover it back up, and he wanted a swimming pool in there. The gold didn't mean that much, but I saw a couple nice little pieces of gold, quartz and gold that came out of there. And it looked like that was where the pocket was that Pike and Crutcher had the out over.
I found that Pike's golden watch chain had been sold to the Slade family in Auburn. More investigation determined that the Slades had sold the watch chain to someone else, and I heard of a Hazel Scott. Doris Vieira got me the telephone number of Mrs. Sanderson on Weimer Street in Auburn, who told me that she had received word that Hazel Scott, caretaker of Harry Rosenberry, a local banker, was now living in Sacramento. I interviewed Hazel Scott regarding her personal knowledge of Alexander Pike Bell.
Yeah, I'm Hazel Scott, formerly of Auburn. Now I reside in Sacramento, California. I knew of Harry Rosenberry. I knew who he was from the newspapers, like that. And I was introduced to him by a very close friend who's now deceased by the name of Ethel Fields. He was looking for someone to look after he and his sister. I had never worked for anyone in their home before, so I was reluctant to go, but I did go. And I agreed to stay for 2 weeks until he could find someone. And his sister was a real challenge. And we got into an argument one day, and she said, I never had anyone to talk to me like that before. And I said, I bet you haven't either. And I thought she was going to fire me, and she didn't. And I kept waiting for her to fire me. Well, she never did. And I didn't look for another job. I just stayed. That was Sophia. It wasn't a really bad argument. She didn't want to get out of bed for a bath, so I gave her a bath and made the bed up with her in it. And I forget what she said, but I turned her off kind of short. And that's what she said, and that's what I said, and that was the end of it. And after that, we never had a disagreement. And Harry got a big kick out of it. And I always got along with him. So that's how I went to work for him. And she passed away about 3.5, maybe close to 4 years after I started working for her. And then I continued to work for him because he said that he was losing his vision and he didn't have any family. So would I stay? And for a while, and I said, yeah, I would. And so I stayed, and I worked for him for 18 years and 9 months. No, I knew Harry had the watch chain. It was in the house for a long time, and I used to see it all the time. And then he had some other gold and stuff in the house. So one day I told him that he needed to take the gold and the watch chain and all that stuff to the safe deposit box, and he did. And he sold it to Paul Schweitzer several years before he died. The Slade house was right across the street from Harry's house. So the Slade girls, there were 4 of them, were all older than Sophie and Harry because they taught Sophie and Harry when they were in grammar school. A couple of them were teachers. And it's coming. He did buy it from one of the Slade girls because the different kids in the family kept wanting to borrow it to show it for show and tell at school. And they got into an argument about it. And the one that had it just sold it because she was tired of them, and she was the rightful owner of it. And so she was tired of the grandkids and great-grandkids always wanting to borrow it. So she sold it to Harry.
To Harry, okay.
And that's how Harry got it.
And then Harry sold it.
And then Harry sold it to Paul Schweitzer. But Harry died in 1996. So Paul Schweitzer probably bought it like 92 or 93. He had it for a few years before Harry passed away. Harry was on the organizing committee of the 1960 or something Olympics. I have some information I'll share with you on that. He was a skier. He was in the 10th Mountain Division in the military, which was a very elite group of skiers. The idea came from a note Dole that we needed men who could ski to fight the war, because that's how they were beating us. To this, he was in that, and he helped to organize what is now called the Auburn Search and Rescue. It wasn't called that then when they put it together, but over the years it changed hands and changed name, and that's a better name. He helped organize that, and he was also instrumental in getting the land where Boreal now is. He knew the people that owned it, and they negotiated, and they got it, and they sued the state, and they won. All kinds of things that they were involved into. Wendell Roby had his fingers in it too. And Wendell Roby and Harry Rosenberry and 2 or 3 other people were the founders of the Auburn Ski Club, even though Wendell gets more credit than anybody else. I think Harry should have equally as much credit as Wendell, since he's the one who got the land. Harry paid $2,000 for it. I don't remember anymore what Paul paid him for it, because it was just a cash deal.
So the $2,000 he paid was to, who did he give it to?
He gave it to whoever he bought it from, the Slade daughter, whichever daughter that was. That's who he paid for it. After Harry died, I took care of John Cousins until he died. He had Parkinson's. I worked for Mike McLaughlin and Joyce. Took care of them. That was after Harry died. Written in Harry Rosenberry's handwriting and signed by him, HLR, for Harry L. Rosenberry, and the date that he purchased the Pike Bell watch chain from one of the Slade heirs.
And
based on the information I received from Hazel Scott, I was able to contact Paul Schweitzer in Vacaville and actually find Alexander Pike Bell's golden watch chain and hold it in my hands. Mr. Paul Schweitzer agreed to a videotape interview where he explained all the aspects of the watch chain and Pike Bell's pistol and rifle. A bonus of my visit with Mr. Schweitzer was a detailed archaeological description in 1990 of Alexander Pike Bell's homestead and its exact location, along with the locations of his gold mines. Much to my amazement, the homestead was located only 8 blocks from the DeWitt Theater. The land, which was originally part of the Bell homestead, and Bald Hill was a section of Bell Road by Deseret Drive, overlooking the foothills to the east. The archaeological excavation was completed by Dana E. Supernowitz from Placerville for the Assembly of God Church, which was purchasing the property. There was more than 2,000 recorded archaeological artifacts found at the homestead site of the Bell family, including medicines, rifle shell casings, dishware, and clothing.
He apparently didn't wear it a lot because there's hardly any wear on the links. And generally you'll get the wear right in here because you got a round, and then this part is square. So where you get anything round and square, it has a tendency to cut into there. And you can see it's just like the day it was made. And this is the fob that is like a stirrup off of a racing horse. See here, that's a stirrup. And then there's a sample of the gold quartz, that's the white there, and then the other side is the black. And if you look, you see all the gold through the whole specimen is another good quality. When you look at these specimens here, you'll see that there's plenty of gold in there. And then you have all these little buckles. in between. And then, of course, here's the horseshoe itself. I guess for good luck, gamblers and stuff like that would have that for good luck. And then this end here is where the watch would attach on this end. And then when they would wear this, they had a big buttonhole here. They would put this out into the buttonhole, and then
Or at their waist.
yeah, okay. So this would go through, and this could hang down just like that, and then your chain would go into to a watch pocket here on your vest. So that's how that was. And then sometimes people would take this and maybe move it over in the middle and make it a double-breasted chain. But as the way it's set up now, it's called a single-breasted chain. And the double would be like this on one side, and then you had this running on the other side hanging down. That would be a double, but this is set up as a single breasted chain.
Right now.
Yeah, you can see.
Tell me again about that.
Yeah, that's called moss agate. You can see the moss in the quartz there, and that is a desirable stone too. Also native of California.
And they did a lot of that, and you see a lot of the old pieces on that.
Where this one here just got a piece of black onyx, and maybe it had moss at one time, but so that's
Moss agate.
moss agate, yeah.
Mariposite?
No, mariposite is the green, I believe. Yeah. You're looking at the opposite side of the fob. That's called a fob, and it's shaped like the black quartz there into a horseshoe stirrup. The other side is the white gold quartz. Yeah, you want to talk about the fob?
Okay.
Yeah, the fob on the end is the shape into a horse stirrup from a racing saddle, and then you're looking now at the black gold quartz.
The quartz itself, does it have like a fern pattern or something?
Well, some of it has like a fern pattern, right? When you look at it, you can see that some of it looks like fern, the fern. And on the end of the stirrup, there is a piece of fern quartz. They call that agate.
Now, how is this quartz held inside this?
Well, it's apparently held in. The material behind there is a reddish material that holds that in there. It must have been a sort of a cement that they used back in the 1850s and 60s.
It's actually encased in.
Pardon me? Yeah, and it's encased in this bezel, which fits very tightly, and it's pretty durable. But it naturally, if you dropped it or something, I've seen cracks in the quartz. It is very delicate.
Unusual.
Yeah. Pike's chain here is also unusual with between each link you have this heavy-duty gold links that tie into the links one to another, which is kind of unusual. Generally it's just a plain loop instead of that it's almost like a four-leaf clover looking thing when you're looking at it.
It looked like four tubes.
Yeah, like four tubes. And that's the only one I've seen like that. So that is unusual in itself.
Now that centerpiece, the center horseshoe, looks like it's double-sided with a horseshoe in the middle.
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
Double-sided, and it's the horseshoe for that gamblers naturally would have that on, for good luck. And it's got the whole thing is 14 karat. It's called a rose gold. It's kind of a rosy, pinkish, rose color. So it's we call rose gold. 14 karat, and the buckles are on every link too, which is unusual. Sometimes I've seen them just a couple of them in the middle, or maybe the middle one with the horseshoe just has the buckle. But the goldsmith who made this really put in everything quality. So.
And so.
And this chain belonged to a famous person in San Francisco, Lucky Baldwin.
So that company may have shown that kind of a design to Pike, and that's how he came up with this design.
Very possible. Very possible.
They have similar designs.
Square link, kind of plain, where this has got the oval on the links, and everyone's got a nice buckle on there. See where the Lucky Baldwin doesn't, but I mean Baldwin's is a top quality chain too. And there's different variations, but if you look in the links here between the two, see how this is a circle, just a circle, and look at the difference in the gold, in the workmanship from just a loop to this kind of a clover look.
And then the fobs are identical?
Fobs are pretty good identical, except this has, Pike's Bell has the moss agate in there. And this is black onyx. Lovely piece of moss agate. And
they both turn or don't?
Well, they
don't.
They don't turn. No, they're just hanging down. Let's see now.
And it spins on an axle?
Well, yeah. What it does, it just kind of, see this part would hang out on the vest and would just move around. 50s and the 60s, so the watches were very, very plain. Like this one here. This watch here was actually, they were the watches back in before 1852 were made in Switzerland and England. Put out some good watches. They were fusee movements, key wine, not a stem wine. You had a little key that you got in the back. And this one here was sold by Tucker and Company, San Francisco, another famous jeweler. So in the 1860s, it's possible that Pike could have had a watch like this, a solid gold watch, kind of plain. He was influenced with his gold mining successfully. In the 1880s, he would have had a watch like this, which is more decorative, called multicolored gold. You have green gold in there, very fancy. You can see the racehorse there with a horseshoe collar around with some diamonds in there. A little, here's a jockey's whip and his cap, racing cap there. And you can see with the beautiful chain that Pike's had, he definitely would have a beautiful watch to go on the end there. So I heard of, like I say, the one watch, Harry said that he inquired about the watch when he got the chain, and he was informed that the watch that he wore on this chain was burned up in a fire. So how reliable that is. But most likely he had something on this order here to go with that chain.
Two major vein systems in the Auburn area. There's the Auburn vein system, which is on the top of Bald Hill along Highway 49. You have several mines. There's a rich mine over on near the KOA campgrounds on the other side of the highway. There's several mines in the area. They're pocket mines in amphibolite. Then you have the Ophir vein system. The Ophir vein system is on the granodiorite or decomposed granite and amphibolite contact in the Ophir area. This is a sample of material, quartz rock from the vein system up here. mostly pockety. This happens to be a little bit more in the quartz. Usually you'll find it right in the dirt. The gold will be free gold in red dirt. But at the time, the red dirt was rock, and the rock is decomposed. One other good example is the Auburn Fair parking lot. In August 1848, just after the gold discovery, even before the 1849 gold rush, the Auburn Fair parking lot, which was a rounded sugarloaf dome of red dirt, was completely mined out by the miners in the early days because it was so rich. Much of the talk of rich diggings in early California that President Polk got wind of by special courier, special messengers, made 2 trips to California before President Polk's December 1848 message to Congress, which said, yes, there is gold in California, and started the 1849 gold rush. Much of that information came from the Auburn Fair parking lot, which was called Rich Flat. Rich Flat has the same geological structure as the diggings up along 49. Maybe not as great a pocket as was found at Rich Flat, but the pockets were just as concentrated. So you have gold that is in clay, red clay. You take the red clay and wash it in a gold pan, and the red clay washes away as muddy water, and you have the gold laying there. There will be, in among that red clay, nodules of mineralized rock that has not broken down into red clay. So you will get brown and green and blue and red nodules that looks like river washed gravel, but it's not. It's the way the bedrock decomposed. And the gold is a lode deposit, but the gold is found formed rounded through there. The California vein system goes right under Auburn Dam. They talk about the earthquake fault under Auburn Dam, how that is part of the Bear Mountain Fault. And that comes up on the west branch of the Mother Lode. It's down in the lowest, 500-foot lowest foothills from Mariposa on up, and the first of the rise of the foothills through Folsom. A hook of it goes under Folsom Dam. The rest of it goes up the American River, comes right under Auburn Dam. There's a vein right under Auburn Dam, right under the Keyway, and then it keeps on going north by northwest right through here. You can follow it all the way out. It drops under Highway 20, where you turn off to go to at Browns Valley, where you turn off to go up toward LaPorte. Down at the foot of Highway 20, there's a big mine in there. What comes right underneath there and goes right up and ends up under the Earthville Oroville Dam. That's one fault in California that catches dams right on a, and they have to build them on the fault. You go up to Forest Hill, the gold's 850, 890 fine. It's just nice gold. But a lot of the ore from the Ophir area was pure silver. As you're going down Interstate 80, under the railroad tracks, you have all those black, dark slate rocks in there. To the left are 2 silver mines. Not gold mines, silver mines that were founded by miners working at one of the gold mines down in the Newcastle area, and they discovered silver. They mined the vein for silver. Below the Auburn Dam, there is a section of vein down there, downstream from the Auburn Dam, about a half a mile down, where you have a lot of this petsite, pretty blue. And every once in a while, you'll get a little piece of quartz that has silver nuggets in it. I found one in, well, it went through the pulverizer. I didn't keep it, but right there, some silver nuggets from one of the pieces of quartz. They got beat around because they went through my centrifugal pulverizer.
Mrs. J. Hawking, whose house is directly across Bell Road from Pike's original homestead, agreed to a videotape interview about country life in the area of Bald Hill, where she grew up as a child. She also described the many gold mine pits of Pike Bell that were still a part of the landscape next to her home when she was just a child.
No, kind of just the the country and the joy of the country. We didn't think about it when we were young because just like anything, it was just part of our life. The open land and our way of amusing ourselves was, you know, being in a barn that had half the slats out of it, 2 stories. I mean, somebody from, you know, now would say that barn should be demolished. It's unsafe. But to us, it was playland because we could go out 1 story and onto the bullpen fence and climb down and get through the hole in the other wall and jump out of the hayloft onto hay. And, you know, when they would hire the bull to come in for breeding, I mean, he was a mean son of a gun. And it was a thrill to go in and go into the bullpen and run from him. We'd get 1 person on one side of the pen and 1 on the other, and the pen was no bigger than this room, and a little bit longer. It's because they had to give them a little room for exercise, but 1 would stand on one end and 1 on the other. And the fence for the pen was real tall, and it was made with like 4x8 boards because he could knock through anything. And 1 would get way up on the fence, and the other one would get down, climb off, and go blah, 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 and stuff to him, and he'd start snorting and go after you. And then the other one would jump down, and then you'd climb up the fence. And I'll never forget one time my girlfriend, she went around and grabbed his tail. She was always so brave, and she thought she was the best. She had to show that she could get the bull the best and run the fastest. Well, she grabbed his tail, turned around and slipped in the mud, and I went, oh my gosh. So I went down. I had to, because he had flipped around to get her, I had to get his tail, and I wouldn't let her touch his tail because I knew that he could kill you because he had good-sized horns. And but I was able to get back on the fence in time, and it saved her life because he would have done it to her. And see, that was country excitement. And I was telling my daughters about that. I said, you know, the excitement that you're getting, they'll say, well, gosh, I wish that we could do this or do that. And I said, well, you're getting Marine World. You're getting roller coasters. We didn't have roller coasters. I said, you're getting controlled excitement. I said, with us, it was lucky if we survived. And we had to have the smarts of the country because, you know, there's rattlesnakes, and there were, you know, running through the bullpen. Well, you don't fool with a lot of things we were doing. But that was our country thrill. The mine shafts and all of that. Grain fights in the barn.
Don Robinson, owner of a local building materials company, agreed to a videotaped interview describing the personality and activities of George Bell, one of Pike's grandchildren.
Well, George Bell worked for years at Sullivan Tire Shop, which later became Elder Tire Shop in town, and they did most of the truck tire business for all the truckers in the area. And I didn't know George lived there, but that's when I found out George was the owner of that property that we were crossing with this water line. So I was apologizing. I said, George, I'm very sorry about this water situation. You're out of water and all this mess. And George says, no problem at all. Lived over on near 49 on the reservoir over there. When you want water, you get a bucket and you'll get water. I'll do the same thing up here. No problem. And I said, I see also that we're constructing a road on the other side of your house. And looks like there's dust on the road a foot deep. And I'm very sorry for that. George says, no need to be sorry. Wind blows the other way. I don't get any dust down here. He said, my wife is a little disturbed, though, about the whole situation. I said, where's she? I'll apologize to her. He says, she's not here. I said, where'd she go? He said, I don't know. She's gone. So about a month later, I saw him down in Auburn at the post office, the old post office in town across from the coffee cup. And I said, George, did your wife come back? Yeah, she came back she was gone about 2 weeks. I said, where did she go? She said, I don't know, I didn't ask her. So I really admired him for letting me off the hook and being so calm about it. So years later, not too many years later, I read in the paper where he died. And I think I was probably one of the more serious mourners when I heard that this man had died. I think I really come to realize that he was a great man.
Arthur Bell is the grandchild of Alexander Pike Bell, described the Bell family as well as the school the Bell children attended on Bell Road. His wife Ernestine was very helpful with the Bell family tree and information at the old Auburn cemetery. Ralph Gibson, museum's administrator, was very helpful in locating information about the life of Alma Bell. When did they build this school?
Oh, years ago, because I went to school here when I was just a little kid. We used to walk down there where you turn around on Jugger Road. We lived down there at the end of the road. We come walk across, come out over here down the draw. We come out down in here.
Well, now Pike Bell said that I thought that Pike Bell's kids went to the Columbia school.
Yeah. They'd have to, because there was no other schools here. There's no other schools around here. Lone Star, and that's way up there on the other side of Goffling.
Yeah, no, it would have to be.
Just Columbia School. They had to go to Columbia School because it's the only school they had here.
Well, there was mentioned in the paper that you had that the kids went to Rock Creek School.
Yeah, which now
no Rock Creek.
No,
they must have come to this one.
This is
because
Columbia
this
School.
It's been here for years and years and years.
So it was
Rock
here
Creek.
before the 1900 then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And how can you describe it? What was it? One room?
One big building. That's all it was, and it had a little peak on the top for the bell.
You know,
And
like the old-fashioned.
looked like a 4-inch pipe for a flag. Put a flag on, because we used to come up every day. We'd have to put the flag up and take it down. And all the Hubbards would walk across the field over here. I had one Japanese kid, he come from...
But it was...
Oh, you go down the road over to you. And he'd walk.
One room?
One big room, that's all it was.
One big room. All the kids were...
All the kids in one room.
Who was the teacher?
Calvin, I think. Calvin,
No.
woman teacher.
You said it was Berkey's.
No,
No, she wasn't there.
Calvin, I think her name was. She used to come out here in a Model T Ford. She'd come down by the Jugger Road, come up around over here. She'd pick us kids up who was walking along the road and give us a ride to
I thought it was
school.
Berkey's. This buried here is Mary Smith Bell, which was the wife of A.O. Bell, Pike Bell, Lester J. Bell, who was the son of Pike Bell, and Lily was his first wife, Lily Bell, Lily Griffin, and Etta Bell was his second wife, and then Buster was Lester and Lily's oldest son. His name was Alexander Owen, but they called Buster. And then behind me here is Joe Bell. I think Joe was a son. I think Joe was Lester's brother. I know he's not one of the kids, so he's Lester's brother that died in 1937. Right over there is some headstones that are old, and a lot of historical people have been buried over there. The headstones are very old, the graves are very old, and there's a lot of history right Rattlesnake Dick, who was supposed to have been a notorious bandit, I guess, wasn't he, of this area, is buried over there.
This collection of videotaped interviews was an adventure of discovery that led me to many people in 3 different towns. Few people in the California Gold Rush, or even after it, ever had the amazing good luck or the intuitive good fortune which followed Pike Bell as a pocket hunter. People who now live and travel on Bell Road probably do not know the historical significance of it, but there was only one Pike Bell. He was the only one who could study the land with his X-ray eyes, somehow see the twists and turns and layers of minerals and formations of gold beneath the earth, and arrive at a plan in his mind's eye where to dig. And dig he did, until he amassed a fortune in gold, only to spend it in celebration. He commanded awe in the eyes of the miners of this gold rush region in the northern California foothills, just 30 miles from the original California gold strike by James Marshall at Coloma, California.